Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would like to continue the conversation with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year, 2020. And today, I'd like to talk about a Blu-ray upgrade of a title that is currently in the collection as an earlier released DVD. This is Spy Number 146, and this is a film from 1957. Mikhail Kalatozov. The title of the film, and please forgive me for my very poor pronunciation, it's in Russian, but it's Letyat Zhuravli. And in English, the title given to it is The Cranes Are Flying. Mikhail Kalatozov's work, The Cranes Are Flying, is a very, it's a film that has so many things going on in it. It is at once a film that has a certain sense of muddy, dirty realism about it, because it is a war film. It is a film that is depicting wartime and the battlefield and things of that nature. So there is a kind of sense of realism perhaps attached to the work, but I think to describe it only in those terms would be only giving part of the picture, because as those of you who've seen the film can attest to, this film is also filled with many very inventive tricks of the camera, use of light and shadow, the use of movement to create things that are beyond reality, or sort of almost a fantasy type of portrayal of this world that is being depicted. And the world is a sort of a macro depiction of the world and a micro depiction of the world, in that we have many levels. We have, of course, the war time, or the war aspect of the film, but we also have the war front and also the home front, and then we have two different storylines that start in the same place but then tend to diverge based on the characters that we follow throughout the course of the film. And this is, of course, centering in on a couple that we meet at the start of the film, Veronika and Boris. And we see how this relationship at first blossoms, or we see how it starts, and then we see how it progresses based on the various events of the film as they unfold. And with the advent of the Second World War and all that had that had involved with it, and all the implications of that, and all the effects of that, both physical and psychological, on these people. It's quite it's quite a harrowing, lyrical, very poetic work that is also very intimate, and it also deals with character and the way in which we have characters trying to deal with loss, trying to deal with emptiness, also trying to deal with loneliness, and also trying to deal with certain aspects of fidelity, and also truth, and also romance and love, and the tests of that. But it's so much more than this, my friends, because there is also this idea of rehabilitation of character and soul, which could also be described as being in many ways a kind of resurrection of the spirit. And I'm talking in terms of character development here, because there are a lot of character turns and a lot of places that certain characters go that might not necessarily be the places that they want to go. And we see how the characters themselves and also the people around them deal with particular choices that certain characters make. And these are on very intimate levels, of course, but they're also on very broader levels in terms of the way in which war impacts not only a society at large, but also a close-knit family and the people around them in the periphery, but also how it affects a particular couple or the people that are in that particular couple, this particular man and this particular woman. And so it goes from the very broad brushstrokes to the very minute and intimate. And along the way, as I say, there are elements of rugged realism, but also there are some real inspired choices of camera movement technique, the way that the camera frames certain images, light and shadow combining in a very heightened realism sort of way to create an overall sense of something that feels epic, but also something that feels very quiet and soulful and intimate and very harrowing as well. So this is a remarkable achievement, and it's definitely worth a look. This is the film The Cranes Are Flying from Mikhail Kalatozov. And so this is a Soviet film, a film from the Soviet era, and comes in 1957. So this is after the death of Stalin, and it comes during what is often referred to in Soviet history or Cold War history as the Khrushchev thaw or the thaw. And so in many ways this is a film when it was shown in Europe and outside of the Soviet Union, it had a very large critical impact, which is, I think, discussed very nicely in the supplemental features on this disc. But this is to say that this is a very significant work in terms of Soviet cinema. And also we have a filmmaker from this particular part of the world who is actually Georgian. And this element of his particular biography is also discussed in some of the supplements in the film, and I think it's quite a significant point when we think about Kalatozov's biography and his filmmaking and his concerns as a filmmaker, not just with The Cranes Are Flying, but with other works in his filmography. And so there is a lot going on here, much going on here, in fact. And so I think the supplements provide really nice bases for further exploration and study of this film. And so what are we talking about here? We are talking about, for example, this is a new 2K digital restoration of the film. And this is presented in 1.37 to 1 aspect ratio, at least that's according to the back here. And I should say from the outset that we have the earlier Criterion DVD, which is right here. And as you can see, the cover art is different. This is a DVD, whereas the new one here that I have is a Blu-ray. And I should say that the aspect ratio described on the back of this is 1.33 to 1. And also there's a little bit of a difference. This is described as being 95 minutes. This is described as being 96 minutes. I don't think, I could be wrong, but I don't think there's any difference in terms of the actual film itself. But I could be wrong about that. Anyone who's an expert in this film, please correct me. But my understanding is the film itself is the same in terms of the content, but perhaps I can just surmise that maybe the extra minute on the running time, at least according to the back, might be due to the extra credits that are given, considering that this is a new 2K digital restoration that's being presented here. So that could be something to do with it, but please correct me if I'm wrong about that. But as far as this DVD is concerned, there are no other supplements to this, and so this might be for a lot of people the option to go to. So I mean, the presentation on this DVD I thought is quite good. It's quite good, but you are getting a slightly different presentation plus new supplements, and so this is the new release of this. And speaking of the new release, we are also getting a new Criterion produced interview with Ian Christie, and it's about 18 minutes. And he is talking about the importance or impact of the film The Cranes Are Flying. He makes a very bold statement about how Soviet cinema could be defined as being a kind of cinema that is either pre-Cranes Are Flying or post-Cranes Are Flying. In other words, there is a real significance in not only the content of this film, but also the time in which it was released. And if, as I say, if we consider the span not just of Soviet cinema history, but also the history of, let's say, relations, diplomatic relations and political relations, interpolitical relations between, or intercontinental relations that make up the backdrop of the Cold War, then the release of this film and the impact that it had around the world, I think, is very, very significant. And I think that is what Ian Christie is, in good part, is referring to when he makes that very interesting statement. And he also goes on in a very clear and well-presented way to talk about Kalatozov's career, and also talk about how points about his career and his biography are significant, especially when considering this film, The Cranes Are Flying. And there are some references made to the earlier works, Salt for Svanetya and Nail in the Boot, so from 1930 and 1931, respectively. And so and you get little clips of those as well, which is really nice. So that is a really great interview to have, again, with Ian Christie. The next, I guess you could call it a Criterion-produced supplement, in that it's an audio interview that Gideon Bachman conducted with the director himself, Mikhail Kalatozov. And it's an audio interview conducted in July 1961, according to the Criterion supplements, in Moscow. And this was during the second Moscow International Film Festival. And it's about 11 minutes. This excerpt that we have is about 11 minutes. And it is audio only, but it's played over certain scenes or pictures to create what could be described almost as being like a video essay. And so I think it's a very interesting thing. And you see Criterion font and Criterion end credits to this. So my assumption is that this is a Criterion-produced supplement using archival materials, this Gideon Bachman interview with Kalatozov from 1961. And so this is really great. I should say that Gideon Bachman is, I think, asking his questions in English, and then we get Kalatozov's responses in Russian, and so we get subtitles here during this supplement. And he speaks about many things. He speaks about the style and tone and the content. He speaks about Urusevsky, the director of photography, the cinematographer, who is very significant, Sergei Urusevsky, and I'll get to him in a second. And so this is also something that's very, very useful, not just useful, essential. You're getting a commentary about the film straight from the director himself. So this is, once again, the interview, an audio interview with Mikhail Kalatozov from 1961, as presented in this supplement produced for this particular release from the Criterion Collection. And then, speaking of the cinematographer, Urusevsky, we have another supplement. This time it's from 2008, so my understanding is that this is not a Criterion supplement, but this is an excerpt from a documentary about Sergei Urusevsky, so Portrait of Sergei Urusevsky, and it is an 18-minute excerpt, and we have many different people who are being interviewed and talking about the director of photography, and talking about his various projects, including, of course, The Cranes Are Flying. And I should mention that the cinematography of this film is one of the key artistic components. It is true for any film, of course, but for this film in particular, the way that certain shots are composed and the way that light is used to sort of capture a look, or to capture a feel, or to get a sense of the environment through a certain perspective or vantage point is stunning. Absolutely stunning. Some of the shot choices here are just breathtaking, and it's wonderful how we get a sense of a kind of epic feel, but it never loses sight of the intimacy of the characters. In other words, it's a camera that feels like it never leaves the characters' hearts, and it moves with the characters, and the movements of the camera itself almost mimics or sort of mirrors the way that the characters feel. And I find that implementation of the camera work as a kind of third eye, if you will, or as a kind of mirror of the heart of these characters, to be absolutely essential in a reading of this film. So Urusevsky's contribution is just nothing short of extraordinary, and it's good that this supplement is here. This excerpt from this documentary on him is here. We get, as I say, we get interviews with some key players, such as Inga Urusevskaya, and also Tatania Samoilova and Alexei Batelov, who are, of course, the main actors in the film, who play Veronika and Boris, respectively. And what's great also is that there's a little anecdote about Pablo Picasso, and Pablo Picasso's reaction to the film. And so that's an interesting little anecdote that you can catch when you watch this supplement, this excerpt. It's very, very useful, very great to watch. Again, Urusevsky's contribution to this film is just nothing short of extraordinary. So this is very good to have. And then there is a very short kind of interview, or an interview with a little bit of extra. It's again about 4 minutes, and this is featuring Claude Lelouch, and it's talking about his perspective on the film, and what his contributions were in eventually getting this film to be shown at the Cannes Film Festival in 1958. And this is considered to be rather a significant moment, because this showing at the Cannes Film Festival was a very big success. And so this led to the film getting worldwide acclaim. And not just worldwide acclaim, but also worldwide acclaim outside of the Soviet Union. And so this is seen as being a very significant moment for Soviet cinema in general. And so this little interview with Claude Lelouch I think is very illuminating, so that's also worth checking out. And then there is a longer documentary about an hour and 13 minutes, an hour and 13 minutes. And this is from 2009, and this is called Hurricane Kalatozov, and Patrick Cazal's documentary. And this is great. This is absolutely great. This is not a Criterion produced documentary, but this is a documentary to watch. It is a must-watch documentary talking about Kalatozov, his career, his life, in some very great detail that I really appreciate very much, and talking about the trajectory of his career, from his early beginnings to to his later works, and what happened in between, and also critical appraisal of his films and the like. And so this is, I guess I say, must-watch viewing for anyone who is interested not just in this film, The Cranes Are Flying, but also if you're interested in the other works of Mikhail Kalatozov, or his life, or his biography, or his filmography, or his professional career, and the critical appraisal of this film and the rest of his works. This is, again, a great must-see documentary. It's an hour and 13 minutes, and I wish it were longer, because it's just it's a fascinating watch, put together extraordinarily well, and there's a nice ease of entry in terms of how it's presented, and there's some great interviews. And so again, Hurricane Kalatozov. So that's the next supplement here with this. And then I should mention that the insert is like this, and it's one of these fold-out inserts with some artistic renderings of certain images from the film, plus some credits. And then on the back of this, we have an essay. It's a good lengthy essay, and this is by Chris Fujiwara, and this is called A Free Camera. Great essay. Goes into, I think, in particular, the film itself, and Kalatozov, and the build-up in his career up to this film, and then the film itself. And it has a little bit at the end about the critical reception of the film, but this is a great essay. You know, I mentioned that there was this earlier DVD released by the Criterion Collection, and here is the leaflet from this particular DVD. And if we open it up, we can actually see an essay in here, which is also by Chris Fujiwara. So Chris Fujiwara wrote the essay for the earlier DVD release, and then he also wrote the essay for this later Blu-ray release. And I should say that the earlier DVD essay by Chris Fujiwara is quite good. It's excellent. In fact, it's a little bit shorter than the one that we find in the newer upgrade release. And there are some similarities. I can probably make a guess that maybe Chris Fujiwara had this original essay and maybe he just built upon it. There are some similar sentence constructions, but it's not a carbon copy of the essay. In fact, I think it has the same bases, but it feels also maybe a little bit rewritten or re-edited. And so whatever the case may be, we do get a longer, fuller essay in this new release, although I should say that the essay that we found in the earlier DVD release is still excellent. So again, Chris Fujiwara providing the essays for both releases, the earlier one and then the later, now current Blu-ray release for this film, The Cranes Are Flying. And so, my friends, that is it as far as the new Blu-ray and the supplements are concerned. But as I say, this is a quite an important work. It is a work that is also very intimate and very expressive and very poetic. And it also is a war drama. And so there is a lot going on here. And the characterizations are sharp, and they are quite inspired. And this all comes in the form of this particularly moving, harrowing drama from Mikhail Kalatozov. And so this is The Cranes Are Flying. Highly recommended if you haven't seen it. And if you haven't seen it yet, I think this Blu-ray provides a great opportunity, especially considering not only do we get this presentation of this film, but we also get these supplements, which, as I tried to indicate, are very, very helpful. And they do provide a good jumping off point for anyone who is interested in a further exploration of this film, its significance, and also its place and the context in with respect to not only Soviet cinema, but also Cold War history in general. So this is the Criterion release of The Cranes Are Flying at spine number 146. Okay, my friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies. Thank you once again for your time, my friends, and cheers.